One snowy Christmas Eve in London, a greedy, grouchy old man named Ebenezer Scrooge is busy working in his freezing cold counting house. A counting house is a place where financial books are kept for a business. While he works, he keeps a close eye on his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who shivers next to a pitifully small fire in the hopes that he will soon be let off work to celebrate the holiday. This miserable scene is interrupted by Scrooge's nephew, who drops by to wish his uncle Merry Christmas and invite him to Christmas dinner the next day. Much to the amazement of his nephew, Scrooge rejects his offer with a "Bah, humbug!" and expresses his venomous dislike of the holidays. Immediately afterwards, two unfortunate charity workers approach Scrooge for a donation, which reveals him to be a miser, or someone who hoards money and spends as little as possible. In response to their request, Scrooge says it would be better for the poor and homeless to die and reduce the excess population rather than be helped by charity. When poor Bob Cratchit is finally released from his duties, Scrooge makes his way home to his apartment, where he has a sudden vision of his former business partner Jacob Marley in the door knocker. Because Marley had died many years ago, Scrooge brushes off the spooky sighting as a foolish hallucination. He soon changes his mind, however, when he is visited by the actual ghost of Marley, who appears as a spectre bound by heavy chains. He explains that his fate is to wander the earth as punishment for his greed and selfishness in life. Much to his horror, Scrooge is warned that he is headed for the same terrible fate unless he changes his ways. Before he disappears into the gloom, Marley informs his former partner that 3 spirits will visit him over the next 3 nights, and immediately afterwards, Scrooge falls into a deep sleep. Startled awake by the sound of the bell tolling 12 times, Scrooge sees the first spirit approaching his bed, the ghost of Christmas past. Although he is scared at first, Scrooge goes willingly with the spirit as they are taken on a journey through his youth. They visit the most important moments of his life, like one Christmas at boarding school where he is allowed to return home for the holidays. He also sees himself as an apprentice working for his former boss Fezziwig, a jolly man who insists on throwing memorable parties every Christmas Eve for his staff. Fezziwig's generosity reminds Scrooge of how poorly he treats Bob Cratchit, and he begins to feel bad for his behaviour. Finally, they witness a painful moment in Scrooge's past where he loses his fiancée because of his obsession with money-making. Revisiting this scene triggers Scrooge and he refuses to see any more. After a brief struggle with the ghost of Christmas past, Scrooge finds himself back in bed, and exhausted, he collapses into sleep. Scrooge awakes to the ghost of Christmas present, a large, jolly spirit surrounded by Christmas food and decorations. Since the spirit has such a pleasant appearance, Scrooge goes with him happily to see the present Christmas day unfolding in various locations. They visit the humble abode of the Cratchits, who are overflowing with Christmas spirit despite their desperate poverty. Though their Christmas dinner is far too small for such a large family, they find happiness in each other's company and the few comforts they have. Scrooge is especially touched by Bob's youngest son, Tiny Tim, who is crippled and frail but full of joy. Later, the pair stop by the house of Scrooge's nephew, who has thrown a Christmas party for his friends and family. Their Christmas spirit is infectious, and Scrooge soon becomes totally engaged in the cheerful party games and laughter. As the day wears on, however, the ghost of Christmas present appears visibly older as his time on Earth comes to an end. He reveals 2 starving children beneath his coat, named Ignorance and Want, and tells Scrooge that they are a product of man's greed. Once again, Scrooge begins to feel guilty for his miserly ways, but without warning, the bell suddenly tolls, and the ghost of Christmas present disappears. Approaching Scrooge is the final spirit, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, who is a spooky figure in a long hooded robe that does not seem to speak. Scrooge is frightened, but as he is now determined to change his ways, he accompanies the spirit who takes him through a sad series of future events. A group of businessmen discuss a colleague who has recently died, and debate if any of them should bother even turning up to the funeral. Next, 3 workers rummage through the stolen belongings of the unnamed deceased man, as no friends or family had claimed his body. He also sees a poor couple rejoicing that their creditor had passed away. Scrooge wonders who this dead man is that everyone seems happier without, but before he gets his answer, they pay a visit to the Cratchit's house once again. This time, one Cratchit is missing, as Tiny Tim has passed away from his illness. Curious to see how he ends up in the future, Scrooge asks the ghost to see himself. To his horror, he is taken to a graveyard where he sees his own name etched on a gravestone. He realizes that he was the horrid man who had died alone and unloved. Terrified, he begs the ghost of Christmas yet to come to give him a second chance to live as a better man and change his ways. As he pleads with the spirit, Scrooge suddenly finds himself safe in bed, as if he had awoken from a dream. Elated to discover that he has received a second chance at life, Scrooge leaps out of bed to discover that he has not missed out on Christmas Day after all, and immediately begins to make Christmas plans. First, he sends a prize goose to the Cratchit's house without telling them who it's from, and then donates an enormous sum to the amazed charity workers from the night before. Turning up at his nephew's house, Scrooge shocks everyone present with his Christmas spirit and good cheer, and they all have a very merry time. The next day, Scrooge continues his drastic lifestyle change by giving Bob Cratchit a raise and promising to care for Tiny Tim like a second father. Thanks to his financial help, Tiny Tim does not die, and Scrooge is known from that day forward as a kind, generous man who keeps Christmas in his heart all year round. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for follow-up analysis videos soon to come. See you next time!